Hey, it's Ike with Create or Die, coming at you with a new series on Blender, modeling of all things. That's right, we're going to be starting from the beginning, all the way from gathering reference materials to blocking out your object, and then going into what I call real modeling, and then detailing all the way through to simple materials and rendering. Get that fine, sexy image out of Blender. So, if that sounds like something you're interested in, stay with me because here we go. Volume 1 starts now. Gathering reference is super important, especially if you're creating something that really exists, like this Polaroid camera. And obviously, I found these images of this Polaroid 1 shot on Google Images, and I've pasted them into my handy dandy PureRef application that can sit above any other application, so that's how we're able to use it inside of Blender. Now for the blocking phase. And for blocking, we're going to start out with a block of all things. Surprise, surprise. You'll see I'm inspecting the cube and looking over at my reference image and trying to decide if that's a good place to start or if there are any changes I want to make before going into edit mode. To enter edit mode, you hit tab and then hit number 3 on your top of your keyboard, and then hit GZ to drag that top face down a little bit, and then grab that bottom face, GZ, and pull it up just to kind of get what we're looking for. And then a quick Command R to slice that box in half, essentially just adding some more geometry. It's not cut in half, it's just a new row of edges added. And that's because I can see from the reference model there that there's a top half and a bottom half. Then Command R to add another slice. And then I'm going to grab that front lowest face and pull it out. And so you can see that's the front of the camera. And then I grab the bottom face and then hit SX to scale that in on the x-axis, because if you'll look at the camera, it kind of tapers in. And then the top, do the same thing, SX to scale that in. And you'll see that I like to rotate around the model from time to time to kind of explore what's going on. And here I'm selecting both faces, right click, and then dissolve faces, doing that on the back all the way around the model so that I can keep the simplest hit 1 to go into vertice mode, select those vertices, then right click, dissolve vertices. Now I'm changing up my reference image to look at one from the 3/4 view to get a feel on whether or not this overall shape is headed in the right direction. Here I'm in edge mode, and I'm moving those edges around to better fit what it is I'm trying to do. Okay, and then Shift A to add in a cylinder, and then in the bottom left, the cylinder options, I changed the number of sides to the cylinder or vertices to 16. And then I'm changing the size of the cylinder, changing the radius down to 0.4 and the depth to 0.2. And it's just disappeared because it's inside of the other model. So holding G, Y, I drag it out. To rotate it, hit R, and then rotate on the x-axis. Hold down Control to snap it. And you can see up in the top left that 90 degrees has been met. And again, referring to my reference model to see if it's roughly in the right place. I'll continue to refine it, scaling it up or down. like drawing, this is all about your eye. We're just using different tools. Instead of a pencil, we're using a blender. And constantly referring to our reference. So selecting the cylinder, hitting 3 to select faces, and then while hovering over that section, hit L to select all linked faces, and then Shift D to drag over a new cylinder. And I'm scaling that down to a size that is approximately the size of the red button on the left. And then Shift D X again to drag that over to the right side to be my stand-in for the dial, the knob on the right hand side, that black knob. And you can see those are floating away from the face, so I'm going to select both of those by selecting one of the faces on each one and then hovering over, hitting the L key to select linked, and then GX to drag it back onto the surface of the face, and then Shift A to add a plane, and then rotate that RX to 90 degrees, scale it down with S, and this is my stand-in for the viewfinder lens over there in the top right of the camera. Just hitting S to scale that, get a feel for roughly the size, and then GZ to drag it down. And looking at the white spaces, I decided it was more rectangular, so I did scale SZ to scale it vertically. Continuing to scale and move it with the G key. EX to extrude it, and now it's become a three-dimensional object. It's like a cube, and I extruded it back into the face of the Polaroid. Alright, hitting 3 to get into polygon mode, and then L as I hover over each of those, and G while in frontal view, and I believe that's 1 on the numpad to enter front view. I'm just continuing to position and scale these objects, because at this point we're just blocking it in. This is our blueprint for the final model. You can see I selected the entire camera body and scaled that in a little bit, then selected the rectangle on the right there, Shift D X to drag it to the left, and then scaling that using SX and SZ to get it more rectangular, to be the little placard for the one-step verbiage there in the top left above the red button. So now that that's pretty much blocked out, I'm feeling good about the general sizing and positioning. Now that red button on mine looks bigger, but that's because it's not just the button, but the white housing around the button that represents. Selecting everything of the body, I right-clicked and then separated it by selection. So now in the top right outliner mode, it's a new object. And what you want to do is double-click on that in the outliner mode and rename it to something that makes sense. On the cam body, I did a Command R to slice it down the middle, and then selected those faces in a loop by holding down Control and clicking on an edge in between the faces to select a loop, deleting those with X and then delete faces, went over to the modifier panel over on the right and added a mirror modifier. That way we can only, we only have to focus on one side of the camera body, and that'll be reflected on the other side. So first off, you want to hit 3 to be in face mode, and then L over top of the geometry to select everything, and then drag out your bisect line where you want to cut it, and then hit enter to accept that cut. We're going to do another cut. I'm getting errors because I haven't selected everything. You can hit A just to select everything and then drag that other cut. And basically what I'm doing here is making cuts to mimic the natural breaks in materials on the camera there. So you can see now, holding shift, I'm selecting the different faces that make up the face of the camera. And then again, left click and split. So I'm keeping it as part of the same object for the time being anyways. Hit 1 on the numpad to look at things from the front, and moving those bottom faces up with G, Z, because I decided it should be flattened a little bit. Now Command R to add a slice there for the Polaroid film section. You can see I have some extra lines right now, but I'll get rid of those shortly. Okay, again, select those faces of the new piece and right click and select split, so now it's separate. Okay, and then hit 3 on your numpad to get into the side view, and then again hit A to select everything, then grab your bisect tool over there on the left, and we're gonna make a slice through the camera to get us started on the angles there towards the back of the camera. So I'm looking at that angle up there in the top left where the viewfinder meets the front of the camera. Okay, so that cut right through. Now the viewfinder piece we're going to handle separately. Okay, first I go hit 2 to select those edges, and then right click and choose edge split, and then grab that top left edge and hit G, Y to just move on the X and Z axis, and move that over until you get something that looks like it's about the right angle, and grab that back top edge, G, Y to just drag it on the Y axis until you get something that feels about right. Moving pieces around, rotating, hit 3 to go into face mode, just push and pull, hit 2 to go back into edge mode. So now this is somewhere in between blocking and modeling. At this stage we're definitely changing the model, adding slices, pushing and pulling different components, edges and vertices and faces. Hit 2, select the edges, right click, dissolve edges, and now that's feeling pretty close to me. GX to nudge some of those edges a bit more. Command R to slice into that top polygon, and then hit 1 to go into vertex mode. Then I'm going to select these two vertices, hit M or right click to merge vertices at center. Okay, now those are connected. Now we have an area that needs to be filled, that hole there. So hit 2 to go into edge mode and select all those edges, and then hit F to create a face. There's a little rectangular pad piece that goes at the top. So I'm going to go back into my pieces, hit tab to go back into object mode, select the pieces object, hit tab to go into edit mode, grab one of those rectangular cubes by hitting 3 to be in face mode, and then L to select the whole thing, Shift D to duplicate it, then R, X to rotate on the X axis, hold down Control to snap it to the right 90-degree angle, and then just G to position, S to scale until we get that essentially where we want it. So you can see I'm repeating a lot of the same steps and commands, and as we continue through this series, I won't narrate everything I do, because you can always refer to the mouse and keyboard strokes down there in the bottom left of the screen. So by selecting that top polygon, 3, and then click to select it, and then S to scale it in, we give it a little bit of a taper. Now I'm trying to grab the bottom, so I hit slash on the numpad to isolate it, and then I'm able to select that bottom polygon, and then hit slash again, G, Z to move it down. Alright, we're getting close to finishing up the blocking stage here. Now to drop in that viewfinder. Okay, so Shift A and then go to Mesh, Cube to add a cube, S to scale it down, G, X to move it to the left, and then G to position the cube approximately to where the base of that viewfinder would be. S to scale it, continue to nudge it, and then grab that back face and actually hit L and then GY to move it forward, grab the back face, GY to move it back, and then I'm referring to my reference material to get a feel for just how far back it goes, and then S to scale it to get that taper. If you'll notice, it feels a little long, the viewfinder and the entire body of the camera, but that's sometimes what happens when you're just eyeballing things rather than using blueprints to build things from. But no matter, we can always, if we decide we want to change the proportions a little bit, there's ways to do that later on. Hit 2 to go into edge mode, hide that object, and then find your edge and select it. Command R to add a slice, slash to isolate the mode, grab that bottom edge, and GZ to drag it down. And then it's just a matter of nudging things into place so that they feel more and more correct. And again, we're just approximating things the best we can, blocking it in at this stage. Okay, and here I go, continuing to try to keep as little amount of geometry as possible. So I'm selecting these faces and then right clicking to dissolve faces, and then hit 1 to go into vertex mode and grab those vertices that I don't need, right click, dissolve vertices. just keeping this as clean and minimal as possible. 2 to grab that bottom edge, then Command B before you release, scroll on your mouse wheel down until you get the bevel, the shape that you want. Continuing to refer to the reference to decide what else I might want to add. Referring to the reference model, I noticed the little eject button. Shift A to add a cube, and then G to move it around generally into the position that we're wanting. G to move, S to scale, back and forth, moving it around, eyeballing, and obviously it's on the wrong side, and because I'm in the body it's being mirrored on both sides, but no matter, because I'll just delete the side I don't want. So then I select that cube and right click to separate it. Now it's its own piece in the outliner. Then hit tab to go into object mode, select that new piece. Okay, then head on over to the modifier panel, and under mirror there's a little drop down next to the camera icon, and there's an option to apply. So we want to freeze this mirror command and end it. So then once we've done that, we can hit tab to go into edit mode, and then select the geometry we don't want by selecting a face and then hitting L while we hover over it, and then X and delete faces. So there you have it. You've blocked out your Polaroid camera. It's looking good. If you're going for the super low poly model look, then you're done. You've accomplished it. But assuming you want to take it further, join me in the next video, part 2, when we